This is part of your wrap, but we ask people to put their phones on silent.
I don't know if Michael will make the announcement, but if not, I will. Good afternoon. Before we begin our service, the family has asked me to share with you that they will be receiving friends on Saturday only, tomorrow from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock at the Newman residence at 3861 Washington Boulevard in University Heights. Vaccinations are required. And for those who would like to make a contribution in Gilda's memory, they ask that donations be directed towards the ACLU or the Hospice of the Western Reserve. And I'd like to just make the usual public service announcement to please silence your cell phones at this time. I lift my voice when all is dark. Into God's hands I place my heart. Piado of Kiruchi, I'm not afraid, Adonai li. I lift my eyes when all is night. When I need help, I seek God's light. Lo echsar Adonai roi. I'm not afraid, Adonai li. Piado av kiruchi. I'm not afraid, Adonai li. I shall not want, Adonai li. I took up a handful of grain and let it slip flowing through my fingers. And I said to myself, this is what it is all about. There is no longer any room for pretense. At harvest time, the essence is revealed. The straw and the chaff are set aside. They have done their job. The grain alone matters, sacks of pure gold. So it is when a person dies. The essence of that person is revealed. At the moment of death, a person's character stands out happy, for the person has forged it well over the years. Then it will not be the great achievement that will matter, nor how much money or possessions a person has amassed. These, like the straw and the chaff, will be left behind. It is what he has made of himself that will matter. Death can take away from us what we have, but it can never take away who we are. We look to the Psalms for comfort. The 23rd Psalm. Adonai roi lo echsar, vinodeh sheyarbitzeni, hamei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni, v'maglei tzedek למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגצל מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צוררי, תשעת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסר ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house forever. We read from Ecclesiastes that for everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, and a time to dance, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. To Lou, to Roberta and Ted, Howard and Mary Beth, Shira and Martin, to the grandchildren Rachel and Matthew and Tanya, Taj, Eric, Anna and Patrick, Alyssa, Talia and Miriam. The world lost a very special and beautiful soul this week, your beloved Gilda. On the very first day of Rosh Hashanah, the 7th day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, the same date exactly 1 year ago, that marked the passing of Gilda's hero and her inspiration, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm not one to believe in coincidences such as these, as I told Lou this week, as there are 364 other days in which Gilda could have passed. So there must have been some divine presence in connecting these two women's lives in life and in death. Gilda always wanted to be a lawyer, claiming that she would have been just like RBG. She was similar in nature to her hero, calm, matter-of-fact, straight to the point, polished, fierce, and people listened when she spoke. The days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have a special name, the 10 days of penitence. It is a period when our thoughts turn naturally to questions concerning the meaning of life and death. It is a time when we look back on our lives and measure our accomplishments and acknowledge our shortcomings, utilizing the values suggested to us by the traditional holiday liturgy. One of the most often repeated metaphors suggests to us a standard by which we can measure our lives. We pray over and over again, Kotvenu b'Sefer HaChayim, inscribe us in the book of life. The image of a book of life is a powerful one, for in a profound sense, each of our lives can be likened to a book. Birth, life, and death are each major divisions of the book. Every important period constitutes the book, filled with the details of words that were spoken or left unsaid, of deeds done or neglected. In the library of the world of people, there are all sorts of books. There are books replete with excitement that one reads with bated breath, and there are quiet books which tell a simple story of a good life lived with dignity and love. And no matter what the contents of the individual book may be, the fact remains that the seal of every hand is set thereto. Each person is the author of his or own life's book, and our readers are those who have known and loved us and have been influenced by the words written during that lifetime. Gilda's book was filled with love and with wisdom and understanding. Each page was filled with text about her adoring husband, Lou, her children and their spouses, the grandchildren and their partners, and the littlest loves of her life, the great-grandchildren. Her earliest chapters contain the story of her work with the post-World War II immigrants to Canada and meeting and falling head over heels in love with Gilda Newman over 70 years ago. She was brilliant in all ways, analytical and assertive, a champion at Scrabble and New York Times Sunday puzzles. She excelled in her profession, going above and beyond to help her clients, inspiring her students, and working for the betterment of all students. But on second thought, I believe Gilda, a generous, dignified, quiet, and brilliant woman, would not have written about any of her own accomplishments and splashed it out over the pages. She was too classy, and she was too humble to boast about herself in any way. Rather, she was the light that guided others, the light powered by her passion for her work and her family. The following pages in her book of life are shared by those who knew her best and loved her the most. Quote, I have many memories from a very young age of my Bubby coming and going from the kitchen as family gathered around her dining room table. She would disappear for great periods of time, re-emerging only to deliver one of her delicious dishes to the guests. She never ate until everyone else had been served, quietly pulling up a chair and sitting still in her apron. After enjoying the company and a few bites herself, she would disappear once again to arrange the dessert, returning only to serve her guests and gather the dishes to be cleaned. This is how my Bubby conducted her life every day. She often put others before herself, never expecting nor seeking acknowledgement. She worked unassumingly behind the scenes to serve and provide for others. She lived a life of honesty, integrity, humility, and selflessness. She was seemingly unflappable, guided always by calm, rational thinking. I cannot remember a time when her judgment or dealings with others were clouded by the impulse that often comes with strong emotion. She lived her life in such a way that earned admiration of her colleagues, family, and friends. We all miss her dearly, but she will continue to guide all of us for our remaining days with the examples that she has set. So long, Bubby. I love you from the deepest part of my soul. Matthew. And another page in Gilda's book reads, "This is how I think of Bubby. Soft, characteristic, beautiful facial wrinkles. The sight of her raising her eyebrows after saying something definitive like, 'So, that's that.' Feeling a pinch on my tush as I climb the stairs and hear her say, 'Hey there, Toots,' from behind me. Unmatched Scrabble prowess paired with unmatched humility. The steady rhythm of her unrushed footsteps around the house and elegant hands always protected from dish soap by rubber gloves. Our gentle, steady, observant matriarch. Love, Taj." Gilda's story continues, quote, "Gilda was one of the warmest, wisest, and strongest people I have ever known. She had a subtle but great sense of humor. I always admired her adventurous spirit when she traveled all over the world to continue her learning and to grow even in her later years. She was a woman of style, always perfectly accessorized, even if she was just going out for a walk. She was just so cool. One of my favorite things was getting to share my own daughter with her. I loved hearing her assessments of Miriam's progress and personality, not just because she would talk about how wonderful she was, but also it always led to stories from her own early days of parenting. Bubby was a great storyteller, and I have always loved learning more about her younger days through those little snippets. She was the best, and I am so grateful for the years I shared with her. With love, Anna." Gilda's Book of Life is filled with stories of her special relationships with her children and their partners. Her daughter-in-law, Mary Beth, continues, "I knew when I first met Gilda 17 years ago that every year I would get with Gilda would be precious. I can still picture her and Lou waiting for Howard and me at the airport as we exited the terminal, the three of us shyly curious to meet one another. I felt warmly and firmly welcomed into the family. Howard compared me favorably with his mom, as we were both math majors and psychologists, enjoyed nice clothing and art, were introverted and responsible, and I learned recently we shared a closeted love of country music and line dancing." Tears and Gilda did not go together. She had little room for emotional outbursts of any sort, yet she understood that her lack of emotionality was not always a strength, and she admired Lou's ability to feel strongly. Gilda was the essence of a matriarch. She led and held the family together. Her departure has wrenched a hole in the family fabric, and I am always grateful for the 17 precious years with Gilda, hardly enough to uncover the many layers of a very dignified, private, and seemingly perfect woman. Learning that saying the mourner's Kaddish and how the Jewish mourning rituals help pull us from grief back to life, I can imagine Gilda nodding emphatically at this moment, commanding, "Yes, carry on." Her son Howard adds another interesting entry to Gilda's story when he writes, quote, "I want to zoom out a bit and tell you how she touched the hearts and minds of the greater community. Gilda had many superpowers, but the most potent and longest lasting was X-ray vision. Not in the conventional sense, however, rather of seeing your bones, joints, and the sinew attaching them. She could see something that ultimately was much more revealing, that is, your potential. She demonstrated this power for over 25 years as a pre-K and elementary school psychologist, and I assisted her for one of those years. Gilda worked with kids who had been referred because they were not thriving. They need someone not only to elevate and evaluate their present needs, but who could direct them for years forward, to see not only who they were, but who they could become. She made the science of psychological assessment into an art because she applied her craft with tremendous empathy. She cared by working late into the night, writing and reviewing educational plans. She cared on weekends, taking calls from parents and principals. She never gave up on a kid and guarded each child's rightful place in the public schools like it was Fort Knox. Impregnable, inviolate, and though her mortal body no longer breathes, her body of work lives on in the generations of kids she helped to guide. Yes, indeed, she had a profound effect on our greater community, and correspondingly by her work ethic, deep compassion, insight, intellect, and unbending moral compass on me. Gilda also had a lighter side even during her last phase of life, with her health declining, and while confined to various institutional settings. Here are 3 examples which I share verbatim, as they are such gems. The first, a neurologist named Dr. Jonah Grossman was examining Gilda in the hospital. He asked if she remembered his name. Gilda said no. He said, "I'm a member of the tribe." Gilda asked, "The Indians?" We told her no, the other tribe, and she replied, "Oh, he's a Jew." After Gilda had complained about the hospital gown she had to wear, we started discussing hospital visitation, and I asked, "Do you like company?" To which she answered, "I like company, but I prefer it when I have pants on." While being served a lunch of barely recognizable mush in the rehab unit, up walked a friendly speech therapist who, after a few introductory questions, asked, "Mrs. Newman, I'd like to see how you chew and swallow. Would you be willing to eat a bite of your lunch?" She said, "You first." Howard ends his chapter. How lucky I was to have such a mother. How lucky, how lucky. Her beloved husband, Louis, will now fill in the next chapters of Gilda's book.
It's really me. I'll take Ruth Bader Ginsburg's advice. She said, "Speak your mind, even if your voice shakes." 67 years, that's our marriage. Some ask, what has our marriage been like? What was the quality of the marriage? I compare it to a fine banquet. There are elements of sweetness, salt, some sour, a little tart, a little schmaltz, but never, ever any bitterness. When people asked us marital veterans for advice, we responded, "Don't let the sun set on your anger." Simmering doesn't improve the taste of marriage. Going back, I got to know her parents well. Joe and Celia Stone are both from the Polish town of Sosmar. They were bright people, fluent in English. Joe was an imposing, deep-voiced, warm-hearted guy who was very involved with his children. He was a feminist long before that word became popular. When Gilda was excluded from a high school math class because she lacked prerequisites, Joe went to the school and had a talk with a very intimidating principal. I remember J.A. Carlyle. He just didn't do such things as challenge the principal in the early 40s. Well, he got her admitted, and she did fine. She also created a solution to a math problem in the textbook that was unique, and it wasn't part of the official solutions. So this was an early sign of her ability to think outside the box, as they say. All through the years, she showed her that touch in playing with information to come up with creative solutions. What I'm hoping just to touch on now, 67 years, too long, we can't go through all that, is some little glimpses of how life situations played into how Gilda lived her life. She did get on the wrong side of her loving dad once. Latin was one of our required high school courses. Gilda was weak in Latin, and she didn't like the language. So she told her father, "No sense in my studying for the Latin exam. I'll flunk anyway, so I won't take it." Joe was outraged. "You will study, and you will take the exam." Well, she took the exam and she passed. Gilda's takeaway from this was that you must try. You must try. You must give your best effort. And Joe expected as much effort from his daughter as he did from his brilliant son. Gilda's mom, Celia, she was diminutive, bright, feisty, independent-minded, and she was pretty advanced for her time. She had her own car, and she smoked cigarettes. Her friends depended on her for rides. She was in charge of the books for the membership group from Sosmer, their native town. She was self-assured, but never self-important. You see these same qualities in Gilda: leadership, never arrogance. And as a bonus, Celia made fabulous blueberry kreplach. Gilda majored at university in math and science. She was the only girl in some math classes. The guys voted her the most popular girl in the class. So there was a change of direction. Gilda wanted to become a lawyer. In an interview with the dean of the law school in Toronto, which was called Osgood Hall, the dean told her that all she could hope to do as a female graduate would be to type the work of her male colleagues, but never get any cases of her own. So the move was made to U of T, the grad psychology program, and then a job at the Jewish Vocational Service. That was a non-sectarian vocational counseling service, job placement, where I also worked. Long story short, we got to know and love each other. We got engaged. One incident stands out. I heard screaming, angry noises coming through Gilda's closed office door. Well, I burst into her office, ready to protect my future bride. And there she was, calmly sitting and watching the client blow his top. Well, fast forward, through marriage, starting a family. A move to Cleveland for me to enter a doctoral program. So here we have a family, 3 active young kids, moving to a strange city, no friends, a new start, no family support. Gilda in full charge of the kids and the household while I hit the books. Well, some of you may remember JFK wrote the book titled Profiles in Courage. Well, the next year, 3 years, showed that Gilda absolutely qualified for a PhD in courage and fortitude. I often told her and everyone else of my everlasting gratitude to her for that. Soon, though, afterwards, we agreed that it was time for Gilda to rouse that beautiful brain of hers as well. So on to the JCU school psychology program. While she was waiting for credentials, Gilda got a job at the Cleveland Hebrew Academy, teaching math and science to girls. The classes were separated by gender. Classes with Gilda left a deep impression on those girls. Years later, in chance meetings, some of these women expressed their gratitude to her for inspiring them to think beyond traditional roles. One told her that she planned to enter medical school. Well, you've already heard that in her 25-year career, Gilda's concern and her affection for young kids, it shone through when she founded the system's first preschool clinic for handicapped children. She gained the respect and the admiration of many healthcare practitioners, as well as from the interns and trainees that she mentored. Well, who were her heroes? Who inspired her? Who were her models? Well, they're all heavy hitters, as they say. They think globally and beyond, and they look at the big picture. Architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Gilda admired him. He's small in stature, but he had a very feisty personality, and he had daring concepts about buildings and natural settings and about creating communities. She admired Charles Darwin. Revolutionary ideas about the nature of nature itself. He was a very careful recorder and cataloger. This habit stuck with Gilda to her last days. Gilda was struck by how he did his work also while he was in the midst of dealing with his beloved daughter Annie's terminal illness with consumption, as it was known then. That was tuberculosis. And who else was her model? Albert Einstein, of course. Revolutionary concepts of space, time, and the universe. And as we know, as we learned, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Clarity of argument, a basic sense of fairness, social morality. In a word, she was a mensch. Ginsburg said, "You can disagree without being disagreeable." I can hear Gilda saying that. Can you? Ginsburg said, "Anger, resentment, envy, and self-pity are wasteful reactions. They drain one's time. They sap our energy." I can hear Gilda saying that. Can you? Well, we've already learned about the striking coincidence. Judge Ginsburg and Gilda both passed away on Rosh Hashanah. Well, who were some of the other heavy hitters, if you want to call them that? In the arts, Beethoven, Bach, Chopin. Gilda played piano. She could, played a number of Chopin's etudes. Bach's two-part inventions, the Cleveland Orchestra, Dance Cleveland. Her pleasures, what were her pleasures? Canoeing on a quiet lake, wilderness camping, cross-country skiing on a frozen lake, I'm filled with gratitude to have been given these years with such a loving and shining person. I am a truly rich man.
I know that so many of you have stories about Gilda, and it is incumbent upon each one of us to continue to share her story, share them with each other, so that her soul, her neshama, will continue to have an elevation each and every time, closer and closer to God. I like to call you Dr. Lou, but thank you so much for sharing such beautiful memories. And I know that your love was so strong and so deep from the first moment that I spoke with you. It just came right through on everything that you said. The book, which was the life of Gilda Newman, is now complete. May all the entries that she made into the living volumes of family and friends and community continue to influence us, inspire us, and guide us through all our years ahead. We say, Lechi l'shalom, rest now in peace, Gilda, for a life very well lived. Amen. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember Gilda. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will certainly remember her. When we have joys that we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, Gilda too shall live, for she is a part of all of us as we remember her. Adonai Natan ve'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given, and now God has taken her away. Blessed be the name of God. I ask all who are able to please rise for the traditional prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen B'Amromim, Hamitzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Shechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezar Harakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Gittel Zlata, שלחה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים, יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, Grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Gilda Newman, daughter of Joseph and Celia, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. This concludes our service here in the chapel. We will continue at Lakeview Cemetery. You may be seated.
I'd like all of those who were asked to be pallbearers, if you would kindly step forward at this time. Pallbearers, I'm going to just ask you to step off to the side for one moment. Pallbearers, if you'll kindly step up alongside the casket, spread yourselves out along the handles on both sides. I'm going to ask everyone else to rise, please. Members of the family, we're going to follow behind the casket going on the right before us. All right, everyone now lift together and step forward. I'm going to ask everyone else to step directly to your cars, please. If you're driving with us to the cemetery, I remind you, you must manually turn on your headlights. It's daytime and your automatic headlights will not turn on. I need you to manually turn them on. You may exit to the front or rear of the chapel through the lobby as you need. Thank you very much.